Hello everyone. So this one is, as I promised, that this video is for Visual Studio installation and some important basic concepts I'll be discussing here. So I would recommend that if you are learning programming for the first time, have a look at this video completely, and you will have again there will be you can be benefited from this because I will be discussing some of the very basic concepts of programming. So I recommend, if you feel, as we have discussed, if you feel somewhere as a as yourself as a very very familiar with the programming, or you are already doing some of the programming, so what I would recommend you is that you can just skip that video. But of course, I'll be discussing some of the very, very important concepts, but they are all mostly the basics. So if you feel that you are a kind of person who has the understanding of all the basics of programming, I would recommend you that you can just skip it out. So I'll be just, so it would be a two-part, like again, this video would have two sections inside itself. The first one will be the installation, and the second one will be the some of the introductory concepts of programming. So now, to install Visual Studio, for those who are doing it for the first time, if you just go here and you type visualstudio.com, so it redirects you to the visualstudio.microsoft.com, and which is very much the area where we want to just land in, and we'll be just discussing a few things about it. So if you come here, you will find that there are different types of Visual Studios here, or there are different types of software. So the first question comes in mind, that which one we will be using and which one is used for what. So if you look at here, like look here, you'll find that there are a few important things. If you specifically, if I start from this right side, this is Visual Studio for Mac. So if you are working on a Mac, this Visual Studio will work for you. So again, the you have this Visual Studio for your Mac systems. You can always download this one. So on Mac, you can run this Visual Studio, or you can run Visual Studio Code. I'll talk about Visual Studio Code shortly, but these two options are available for the Mac, and these two options are available for the Windows. Again, this one is common with both. If you see that, it shows Windows and as well as Mac and all those. So basically, what you need to do is that you can work on either Visual Studio, this one, or Visual Studio Code. Now, what is the difference between Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code? That's another question. So I would like to answer that question first as well. So what is basically in that? So if you see here, it says full featured IDE to code, debug, test, and deploy on any platform, to any platform. So Visual Studio, the Visual Studio, without any code or anything, it's our main, full featured IDE. IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. So it's a full featured IDE that does not depend upon any other thing, usually, to accomplish your task. As it says, fully featured. So everything is basically, one way or other embedded inside it. Everything is inside that one. So all the things that you require, and it is a, as the name suggests, full featured, and having all those nitty gritty details, all those heavyweight libraries, heavyweight things that are needed to code, debug, and test your applications, right? So what we'll be doing is that we'll be working on Visual Studio rather, right? And what is Visual Studio Code then? I would recommend, if you have never used Visual Studio Code, this is a very, very interesting and a very lightweight version of Visual Studio, right? What it says, editing and debugging on any OS. But you see that there are features are missing. There are lots of things which are missing. So Visual Studio Code, I say it, or maybe if you just read about it, it's more like a web browser environment where there are no, facilities, or there are no heavyweight libraries and things like that being there. So that if you want to do something in Visual Studio Code, You will need to do what? You will need to have plugins installed, like you see in your web browser. You need to have a plugin. If you want to run C sharp, you need to have a plugin for that, and need to you know install extensions for that one and things like that. So I hope that makes sense, that Visual Studio Code is a lightweight editor. But on one hand, it's a lightweight editor, but on the other hand, if you are familiar with web development like HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, if you want to work on them, I would recommend you Visual Studio Code. So in essence, if you want to do something on web, maybe HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you will find this Visual Studio Code as a very good help. And I would recommend you, if you are working on that, you should go for that. But for our purpose of our course, as we are talking about C#.NET, this Visual Studio fully featured system like software is basically something that will be used. It's a heavyweight. You will see it's a very much heavyweight, and I'll tell you as the time progresses, we'll see that there are the size of this Visual Studio is very much, and we need to like give that consideration. This is a very lightweight one, so you can just install that one, and I would recommend that you can just still install that and just try to run that. It's a very, as I said, it's a very lightweight type of of an environment. So the best thing is that we have to do the Visual Studio. And which out of this Visual Studio will be using? So we have got Community, Professional, and Enterprise edition. So Professional and Enterprise, of course, they require licensing, and if you're like, again, I don't know if you have that facility on your email and your subscription, that you'll be having the license for that. But for the purpose of our course, what we can do is that we can work on this Community edition. And let me tell you that Community edition, even though it's a free version, and you see, free for individual developers, academic users, and open source. So even it allows you to have, if you have a very small organization, it allows you to use Visual Studio to code your applications. Like, again, it's an interesting fact that they say that if you have a very small business, you can still use Visual Studio without any licensing issues. And the thing that you can use is basically this Community edition. So what we are doing, we'll be working on this Community edition. So go on this link and click on download. So you'll see that, interestingly, the first thing that is downloaded will not be the setup file by itself. Rather, it is something that would install the setup. So if you see that I've got this one installed, if I show that in folder, if I click on it, so you see that now what it is doing, that it will be just downloading the setup for me. So you see here, it says before you get started, we need to set a few things so that you can configure your installation. So it's not, again, it has not downloaded the real installer, but it's something which is starting our installer. Okay, we say continue. So you say it's downloading something of 27 MB, and now then it's basically downloaded, files downloaded, unpackaging and installing. Now it is just in packaging, and now it is preparing the downloader for us, specifically the something that will install application for us. So now if you come here, this is a very interesting part, and here we want to just here we'll be just looking at few different things, different options that we have, and what options do we need, and what do we need to install. That's why I was saying that you need to look at this video, because I'll be discussing few important aspects of the different elements that we have over here. And one important point to notice is, see here, the total space required. Right now it says that only 856 MB. Why? Because right now there is no major major thing has been selected. So it's just coming up with most basic things. And what we need to do is that we need to select over here what we want to use for this particular installation. So if you see here, it is giving us different options, right? So it said it helps choosing what to install. What do you want to install? What are the workloads that you want to install over here? So if you see here, there are different options. The first tab says, the first section says web and cloud. The second section says desktop, mobile. Third says gaming. That other one says other tool sets. There are lots of tool sets over here. What we want to do here is that we want to have specifically what we need for our application. So if you see the first one, ASP.NET and web development, this is something that you would always like to do. As I said, for specifically, if you are not doing .NET development, if you are just doing HTML, JavaScript, CSS development, as I said, you must go for Visual Studio Code. But in Visual Studio, if you use this ASP.NET and web application development, you will get all those heavyweight implementations that are required for you to make your web applications, heavyweight web applications that would contain that would be based on ASP.NET. I might talk about this during our lectures, that what is ASP.NET, how you can do just web development as well in that particular scenario. And then we have this Azure development, and I expect you people to be familiar with Azure. And this is a Microsoft Cloud implementation. And when you create your applications, this Azure can help us out to just to present or to publish our applications on cloud, and to have that application available for the other one. So I would be selecting that one as well. So Azure is again the the um, the cloud-based implementation of Microsoft. There are three popular clouds that we have today: AWS, GCP, Google Cloud Platform, and then this Azure. So we are just so if you see here, if you see here, let me just do this. So if you see here, when I selected this one, I just forgot to tell you, this was 856 MB. If you see here, total space. When I select this one, you see 9.27 GB. It means that it's a very heavy weight. So you need to keep an eye on this. How much you want to basically how much you can accommodate in your system. By the way, sometimes you have a very little space, so we'll be just going for the typical things, and I'll let you know what are those typical things. So if I go for the Azure development as well, so you see that it has almost added 2 to 3 GB, and there are different files that it is adding, and there are lots of interesting things that it is adding. And there are a few things that I'll be discussing during the if I just use share. So there are lots of components that it's adding, optional components that have been added. Live share is one of the very interesting one. Well, live share is something that you can share your screen, share your code with someone, and you can just together work on that. And there are lots of other things. So just keep that on their default, which it is selecting there. That is enough for Azure PowerShell is being downloaded, and there are lots of things. Python development. So those who are familiar with Python, they would know that they can just install this Python as well. We don't want Python as well right now. We won't be working in Python, so I'm not going into that one. Node.js development, I won't be doing Node.js development. That's why I'm not selecting Node.js. Now, .NET desktop development. This is very important, and this is something that we will be just looking at. So again, if in essence you can just leave out this one and this one as well. Again, if you are running out of space or you want some space, you can just select this one. So if I select this one, you see that now I have 12.23 GB. So keep an eye on that, 12.23 GB. And now I have got how many things I've installed. I'm selecting ASP.NET Web Development, Azure Development. I've selected .NET Desktop Development. And also, let's talk about, so if something is coming in C++, we are not interested in that anymore. Or maybe, like, again, we are not doing anything related to C++. Rather, we want to go for something called Windows Platform Development. This is very important. This is the GUI based. If you remember, we have talked about this Universal Platform Development. So I'll be selecting that one as well. Right. So now it is 23.707 GB. So you see that it's almost a 10 GB, but it's an important one. Why? Because then you have this forms option and Windows platforms, and you can create some very cool applications by using this Windows platform application. Right. And then this is mobile development. And it's one of the very, very important aspect these days. You need to have everything in your toolbox if you want to work on the mobile development. So mobile with .NET, mobile development, build cross-platform applications for iOS, Android, or Windows using Xamarin. So Xamarin is a very interesting concept, and we'll talk about the Xamarin later on. So I would recommend you to just install that one as well. Now it has gone to 27.07 GB. So with respect to gaming, we are not discussing anything related to games. So I'm not installing that. By the way, you can always change these one. You can always come back and select or remove uh, any elements later on as well. So we are not installing anything with the gaming development. From the other tools, this is the tricky part. From the other tools, we want to have this data storage and processing. Why? Because we will be connecting our applications to the SQL server. If you remember, we'll be connecting that one. So that for that way, you need to have this data storage and processing installed into your system. Right. So what else? Data science and analytical applications. We are not discussing the analytical applications, so to speak. So I might not be going for that. Visual Studio extension development, yes, I would go for that. It basically tells you that you can have some extension development over here. So I would be going with that, uh, uh, this one. And then Office SharePoint development, if you want to go for the SharePoint development, which we might not be going. So I'm not selecting that one. I'm not selecting Linux with C++. What I will be select is .NET Core. So yeah, I'll let you know in the class as well what is .NET Core. So I'll be selecting this .NET Core as well. So if you see here, now here we have got 27.25 GB of data, of installation. So it means that now it is basically we are we are ready to we are ready to go. But again, before going into any of the details, what we want to do here is that we can have different things. If you see, we have got individual components. It tells us .NET 5.0 runtime. Those who are working in that, this LTS is long term, stable version, right? So it's a long-term stable version. They are the long-term supported, not stable, supported version. So basically they are all installed over here, which will make our most of the applications running. So this is, all these things, individual elements have been added. And you see C# and Visual Basic cross-lane compilers. The compiler will be installed, MS build, everything is. So these are there are lots of information. We might not want to go into everyone details. Then we have language packs. We are selecting this in English. If you prefer some other language, you can always select that language as well. And then installation location. So this is important, and you need to keep in mind. So Visual Studio IDE is being going to this location, Visual Studio 2019 community, and the download cache C program Microsoft Visual Studio packages. The cache, the memory that will be going. If you see Visual Studio is this location to download installation files, you can choose not to keep download cache after installation. So we can just delete these packages or anything after that. Keep download cache after the installation. If you want to keep it, I'm just keeping it. You can just remove it, or if you want, you can just keep these files. So shared components, tools, and SDKs. So you have got this one, and if you see here, what does it say? This location contains shared files for side-by-side Visual Studio installation. Some tools and SDKs installed to a location on this device, while some others might override this setting and install to other device. So this is typically, these are the paths where our files are going. So you say system cache and SDKs with specification 9.7 GB. Now we are almost good to go, and we can see that it's going into x86 and Microsoft Visual Studio 2009 community. So for the by the way, if you want, you can just do one thing that for the later one, you can just later on find one as well. But if you want, you can just keep a copy of it by snipping tool. Okay, so now I will just start installation. And you see install while downloading, you can have this option. You say that you can do that, download after all, then install, or install while downloading. So we are doing install while downloading. So we want to install that while it is downloading. So I will just start this installation. So some interesting facts before I will just pause the video, because it might take a good amount of time. So before that, you see that developer news are coming. So there is a Microsoft Build to 2021, Microsoft Imagine Cup that usually happens over the year. Like, even it's a very interesting one. Finding bugs with address sanitizer patterns from the other source projects, and then announcing Visual Studio 2022. So it's a good news. And if you want to just have a look at these news, you would enjoy those news. Sometimes you find some of the very, very important aspects of that. So you see here the progress which is showing, and hopefully now you will have that progress as well. If I go to available, which I have this enterprise and professional edition available. If I have these licensing issues, licensing things, then I can just install that one as well. But right now, installed in the installed, I have this Studio Community 2019 version being installed. So it's starting, it's installing, and if you see that it's downloading 520 MB, and it's side by side it's installing the packages as well. You see 64 packages have been installed out of this 5604 or whatever values it has. So it is basically, now it's basically just downloading all those one. And what I'll do is that I'll just pause the video here and I'll wait for this all installation, and then I'll just continue about it. Okay, so it's about to be done. If you see here that 99% is done, it's now finishing it up. So I hope now you people are also at the same position. You people have also installed it, and let's just wait for a few seconds before it finally is completed. So right, so I hope now you understand that the difference between Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is a web browser-like environment where you need to, whatever you will need, you will have to install the extension for that. You will have to install required plugins for that. While as Visual Studio, this one that we are using, it's a giant, fully featured, the environment IDE, integrated development environment. I've been using this term. So this will basically do what it has, all those the requirements that are needed. It has all those things basically already available for our use. So still it's just doing that. Okay, so it says there is something wrong, but I don't know. Microsoft Visual Studio ASP.NET 45.feature. Okay, no problems. I don't right now, might not be that an issue. Let's see here. So now we are very much into here, and you know that what is the benefit of like signing it up. We are not signing it up right now, but again, if you sign it up, of course it will have all your settings and everything all together. So right now I'm not signing it up, and I'm just going on here. So okay, so it will be just asking for some of the environments. So we have got these different types of environments or color themes that you can use. Some people prefer this blue one, this extra contrast, will maybe light one. I usually use this light one, but if you prefer, you can use anything from that. For example, if you prefer this dark theme, which is Visual Studio Code, usually it comes up. And but again, if you want this one, black one, you can change, but you can always change these settings later on. So we have got this environment. So this is development settings, it's asking. So there are different environments that we can use, but the problem is that if you select any one of them specifically, that has some impact. So just keep that in general, because the impact is that I'll just discuss that impact on that way. So for example, I've just selected maybe this blue one, and then I'm just starting Visual Studio. So we are preparing for the first use. This will be installed for the first time, and let's see that how we go about it and what type of applications we'll be just developing over here, and what type of things we'll be working on. So as I said, that I would be just giving a very basic introduction today, and that introduction will give you a very good sense of what we are basically trying to do here, what are variables, what are different things, and I'll just talk about that. So by the time it's starting now, it's very much started Visual Studio now. So open recent, if you have any recent applications, recent project folders which is not there, so it will show over here, which is not over there. But if you see that connect to a code space, this is something, development environment, repository cloning. I'll talk about Git and GitHub in details. Open a project or solution if you have already. Open a local folder if you want to open a folder. Create a new project. So we have these multiple options. Now, if you go down deep, you will find a continue without code. Right now, if I just click on it, I'm just starting my Visual Studio without anything at all. And as I said, by the time we'll be just going through, there are lots of things that we'll be discussing, and will be introduced to each and every aspect of this environment. And if you see that there is a very important part of tools, if you go to tools and get tools and features. So if you go to tools and get tools and feature, okay, I don't want this. Okay, so we have got this Visual Studio Community 2019 installed over here, and we have available are these things available, which we can later on just uh, work on. So this is basically the tools and features that we have. Then we have these options over here that we can just use. The options are, for example, what are the different things that you want to do, and you see that the theme that we selected in the beginning, you can just change it from here. You can go from blue to dark, for example. And what else you can, there are lots of options that you can always look at it. If you are looking for something, you can always come. For example, if you come to the fonts and colors, what is going on? Okay, maybe it's implementing that theme, for example, right? So now if you come to this fonts and colors, if you see that it says that this in this text editor, what is going on, the text editor font size is 10 right now. I'll show you, and we'll change that, and we'll see that. And it's color, the foreground color, the background color, sometimes people have their own like preferences for that. So again, these are all the default settings that we have. So again, let me just set that. Okay, so now it has gone to, see the dark theme, which I don't uh, might not like. I will just again go back to my the basic theme or the light theme, because I just usually prefer that light one. But if you prefer, you can always go for this black theme or dark theme. So that's why it's just taking up some of time, because it's, so now if you go here and do new, and you have to just start new project. If you just click on new project, now during the lecture we will be just discussing in the coming week as well, we'll be just discussing about that, like the lecture file. If you look at it, so there are different options being given over there. So what type of application we want to create over here? We want to create a console application, and a console application that should be that has, for example, C# support, and we want to just create this console application for our purpose of this project. So you just select this console application from this one and go to next. Now it's asking for a name, and not only name, it's also giving me a location over here. C users, Snoman PC, source, repos. So my projects will be saved on these locations. Okay, so I can just understand the solution name is console app1, which is our project name. And place solution and project in the same directory. If you want, you can just place both of the things in together, but if you don't want, you can just make them separate, keep them separate. So select next. So it's asking for what type of target framework we are using. So again, we have got long-term support version, as I said in the beginning. So we will be just keeping on that. Why? Because not keeping on the current, that might be, there might be few things that are not that might not get supported, or there might be some problems. So we'll be just selecting 3.1 over here. So create. Okay, so let's wait for that. It's going a bit slow. I don't know why. It should not be that slow. Okay. So it's creating a project. And I think for the first time, it will be just taking a bit of time, and then it will just get settled by itself. So it's creating a project, and hopefully it will just come up with that. So this will be our first project. And here, something interesting that I want to show you over here, that you can have a look at it. So if you see here, this is the one application that we were discussing in our lecture file as well. And let me just show you the lecture file as well over here. Installation of Visual Studio. So what I am doing is that it has to be, we have done the installation now, the create the new project, and we have said that we are talking about a console application, and an application of console we have just created. So types of projects. So there are different types of projects. We'll be interested in two types of projects: console application, which runs in Windows console. So it will be just giving us output in the Windows console window, the black window that we have. We'll talk about that. Windows Platform Foundation, WPF application, which allows to create run applications consisting of multiple Windows forms. This is the other type, which is more GUI based, GUI based, and we'll talk about that. But right now, what we are doing is that we are talking about the console based applications, and this is our console based application. You see that I've just here we have this just copied the code, and I will just talk about. So even this code is in my view is a bit more complex than what I want to show you here. So what I'll do over here, rather than doing something, I will just remove even this one. I'll let you know that what is that and how we can just work on that. But first of all, if you look at this code, I was discussing this in our last class, but now today I'll be just giving you a quick reference of few things. The first and foremost important thing, you need to have one main function in every program. What is a function? That's a $1 million question for those who are new. They might not be that much familiar with that. So what I'll tell them is that what is a function. So how do you recognize something as a function? So if you have something called, for example, ABC, and there is something called something like this, ABC. So which one out of these is function? So please bear in mind that we have this one is a function. So function is recognized with this, this parenthesis. So whenever something is a function, it must have those parentheses alongside it, right? What is a function? Function is a piece of code that we write once and we use as many times as we want. This is the smallest or simplest definition. If you want to, if you want to do something repetitively, you write a function for that. And to write a function, what you do is that, as I said, that I'm writing an XYZ function. So what I'll do is that I'll say that XYZ brackets. So now it will show that this XYZ is a function. But if I ask, is this X a function? You'll say no. Why? Because it does not show this parenthesis with that. So again, to start with, to just recognize few things, I'm just letting you know that a function is recognized by using this parenthesis. So the first and foremost important thing, every console based application, if you just open this application here, if you come, this is a solution explorer that shows you all the files that are related in your project. So you see that your project's name is console application app1. We have just to use that. There are certain dependency which have been defined over here, and this is program.cs, program.c#. So this is one program that will always be in by default when we just create our console application, program.cs. This is our first program. Every application that you start, or every the application will have one main function inside that. If you see, this is the main function. This is the body of the main function, starting of the body, and this is the ending of the body. Now, what is this main function? Every program should have a main function, and this main function acts like a gate of our program. Gate of the program. What does that mean? When compiler will run our program, it will always try to find the main function. So you cannot have a C# program where there is no main function with capital M. If you are familiar with C language, you people will be familiar that in C language we used to have this main with a small letter. But here, this main is a capital, is starting with a capital letter. So every C# program must have this main function in this original form, capital MAIN, and then square, like this, parenthesis. Right? So let's talk about something about a function in general. So the first thing, functions, piece of code that you write for repetitively doing something. And the other thing that I'm just telling you is that every C# program must have a main function inside that with capital M. Two things are clear. Now let me just clear all those right. Now let's talk about functions in general, because as I said, I'll be focusing here those students who are here for the first time. So if I ask you, I usually give a very interesting example over here to the student. Juicer. So do you think this is a function? Of course, you most of you will be saying yes, this is a function. And how do you recognize? It has these parentheses in front of it. Now a function has two capabilities or two features. Not two features, there are multiple features, but again, there is something called that every function can accept anything inside itself. So if I say a juicer and I write apples or apples. Now, if I ask you what is this function all about, juicer, you will say it's a juicer is a function that accepts apples. We can pass apples to this juicer function. I hope that makes sense to everyone. So whatever is passed to the function is always written in these parentheses. Now, a more realistic example of that, again, if you are making a function to add two numbers, addition, for example, and you will say, for example, I'm just writing out the number exactly, 5 and 4. So you'll say, okay, this addition function will accept two parameters. This is called parameter or arguments. So this addition function will accept two parameters, 4 and 5. Or maybe if I generalize it, addition int. We'll talk about int is integer. Well, we'll talk about that. So okay, you say that addition is a function that will accept two integers. I hope that makes sense. Now, there is something that function returns as well. What is that? It means that, let's take this juicer example again. Juicer was a function that accepts apples. Everyone understand that? So if I write something like this, juice, juicer, apples, what does that mean? Just read that out. We'll just read that out. You see here, juicer is a function. How do you know it's a function? Because it has this parenthesis brackets with it. Juicer is a function that accepts apples and it returns juice. You give it apples and it will return you the juice. Let me just clear that. Oh, just cleared out everything out. Let me just that again. So let me just, I'm not using this one. Rather, I will just use something here because I can just do something like that. Okay. So what I was saying, that juicer is a function that accepts apples as parameters. It accepts apples as arguments. We pass apples to it, and it returns what? It returns us juice. Right? What does that mean? Okay, let me make it a comment so that this error does not come. So that let me just tell you, those who are unfamiliar, we have something called a comment, and we can have multiple line and single line comments, and I'll just write it down over here so that we can write the things. So juicer is a function that accepts apples and that returns juice. And I gave you another example of addition function, and I said this accepts two integer or one integer or any number of integers. So if I write something like that, for example, if I write so again, if I write addition int. So now what you'll say? You'll say addition is a function that accepts two parameters, integer parameters, and it will return one integer parameter, one return type, which is integer. Let me take my annotator again. You see here, addition is a function that will accept two parameters of type int, and it will return one integer. So something that comes before the name of the function, something that comes before the name of the function, it is called return type. Return. Let's write return. Here comes function name, and here comes what you call parameters. It's the most generic form of the function. So whatever function accepts, right? Something like this. It can be 1 to any values. It is called parameters or arguments. Whatever function gives back is called return type or return value. I hope that is making sense to everyone. So let me know again, those new students who are here for the first time, who are learning programming for the first time, because I'm just focusing them right now. So a function is something like that. So how do you recognize a function? With their name. How do you recognize a function? What function accepts? You say that whatever it accepts, we put that in this parenthesis. Whatever function returns, we put that before the name of the function. So one space before the function, right? So that is called a function. Okay. Why did I discuss this function over here? Because I wanted you people to be familiarized with main function first of all. I'm just deleting this one. You can just type it in your own. So main function, we have got main function. So again, if a function does not return anything, addition, if I said integer, you're familiar. You said, oh, okay, it means that this addition function accepts two parameters. And if I write something like this, you will say, okay, it returns two parameters as well, right? So now how about this one? I say that this addition function will accept two parameters, int, but this function does not return anything. So if you want to show that, you like write void, right? So this void shows that this function will not return anything. I hope that makes sense, right? So now see here, this main function, you remember there was some parameter written over here, but this main function can have many implementations. So I have used the most basic one. You can just leave out that parameters. It can accept some parameters, but it never returns anything. How do you know? By using this void. If this void is there before the name of the function, it shows that this function cannot return anything. It won't return anything. What is this static? I'm not discussing this static right now. I will discuss it with all class, because right now I'm just focusing very basics. We'll talk about static. Static is a very important, interesting concept, and you will enjoy that concept. Why we define a function as static? Why we define something as a static, right? So first and foremost important thing, there should be a main function inside that, and this main function is coming inside this program, which is being called as a class. So by default, it creates a class for you, right? By default, it has created. We have not done anything. We'll talk about the classes very much detail, but right now we are saying that it has automatically created a class for us, right? So now if you see that there is something called a namespace, and as I said, I would be discussing most of the things in the class, because I am not expecting everyone to be looking at this video. As I said in the beginning, that if you are feeling, if you feel yourself at a good level, you can just leave that out. So I would be discussing very basics over here, and most of the things I'll discuss during the class. And as we have seen that before, using system is what? It's basically that we are saying that we will be using a system library, a namespace. It's a namespace that would contain lots of functions and different things that we'll be using over here. So for example, we are using this console. This console, if you see that it is coming from system, can you just read that? This console is coming from this system class, a system class or system namespace. So if I use this system, that would be available. If I just delete this system from here, for example, if I don't use this system, you see that this squiggly error. And why this error? Why? Because it says that console does not exist. Why? Because console does not exist here. Console exists in system. So there is another alternate way. First of all, let me just use that again. If I use that system, is it working fine now? Right? So it says that now it recognizes. But again, if I just delete that, is there any other way around? Yes, there is another way around as well. What is that? If I write here system dot, you see? But it's a hassle to write system with everything. Rather than, what you do is that you just delete this system from here, and you just go there, and as a library or as a main, you just do that system, using system. Now it will recognize that. Okay, so just keep it simple, just to want to make it simple. But I'll say this: console dot write line. Console is, as we said, that it represents standard. If you see, it represents the standard input output error streams or console application. So whatever we need to write on console, we use this console dot write line for writing something on our program. So if you see there console dot write line hello world, it says that go to the console and write a line, which I'm writing over here, hello world. So it will go to console and write this first line, hello world, on the console. Now, how to run this file? How to run this program? So there are multiple ways of running this program. You have got a lots of like menus over here. You have got this button over here, this console application if you want to run it, and you have another thing which is the shortcut key, which is Control F5. I'm just using Control F5 to run this program right now. You just run that. It will show you this build. It will be showing that this program is being built, is under build, and it's building this program, and we are running this program for the first time, and it should be displaying our output over there. So if you see here, you see that now we have got hello world out as an output, this hello world. So just to make you play around with these things, you can just change this hello world with your name. For example, you want to see your name printed over there. If you are doing programming for the first time, of course you want to have a look at that. And if you want to again run it again, Control F5 I've done, so you see that I can see my name Namanatik over here, and you can just have your own names, right? So this again, during this video, I've just tried to keep myself to few of the basics. I've not discussed lots of basics, because I feel is that there are few things that I would be discussing during the class. And there are this PowerPoint presentation that we had, and we will talk about that, because again, since again I'm saying I'm not expecting everyone to be looking at these videos, so that's why I will be just um, I will be just running or discussing this one with everyone in general. So we'll talk about this input output requirements of a program, variables, and there are lots of cool stuff that we have to discuss. But right now I'm keeping to this one. So now you know how to run a program. I will discuss about Solution Explorer. What is the Solution Explorer? What is this properties feature? There are whole lots of new world over here. But what I want to say here is this Visual Studio is a whole giant a giant working environment, and it is called IDE. I've just told you IDE. Yesterday we discussed about compiler. I hope now you know the concept of compiler. I would recommend you to just go and read about compiler online somewhere, so that you get familiarized with those sort of things. So with having said that, I would just stop this video over here, and I will start from this point onward in our coming week. We might have we might don't have a class on Monday because of that Victoria Day. I think it's Victoria Day on 24th. So, but again, we'll have our class on Tuesday, and we'll be discussing all these things over there. So now what I'm expecting from all of you is that you will be very good in that. And one thing that I've discussed, I'll just quickly discuss that. These are called comments, which compiler ignores. You can write anything after this one. These are called single line comments, and there is a concept of multiple line comments. If you do select like \/ and asterisk, and if you write multiple lines, it will make all those comments. And if you place this one, then it will just stop this commenting, right? So these are called comments, multiple line comments and single line comments for those unfamiliar. And I will talk about namespaces in specifically when we talk about when we will be in class. I'll specifically talk about static, which I have not discussed, but I've told you about the function, and I'm expecting you people to be familiar with now with the function. That function is a piece of code that we write for something, that we write for our own purpose, and then what we do is that we need to run that. And as I was saying, that if I just take out this main function, I have just done this main one. I've just taken out main function. Again, that means I've deleted the main function. And if I want to run this program, you will see that it has errors. There was build errors. And what is that errors? I don't want to run. I want to say program does not contain a static main method suitable for entry point. So main is always a suitable entry point. Main is a entry point. So it means that every program should have a main function, and that main function will be over there. What I can do over here is that let's talk about few things quickly, just to make you again aware. This is our main function, right? So I'm just writing that one. This is our main function, and what I do is that I just copy this one and I paste it over here, and I say it main one, right? Subfunction or main one function. main1 function, right? So I can just define function something like this, and if I want to run this function, I'll have to just call this function over here. But never ever, name your function as main. Why? Because we this creates a, you know parts of confusion. So you see here that our the main function is running, and then it is calling the other function. And I'll talk about that in deeper detail. But again, as I said, please never name it main. You can call it ABC, whatever you want, and you just call it ABC, and now you can call this ABC function. So that is called, you're calling a function, and then you have, but always remember that our main entry point will always be the main function. So thank you very much. I'll be just stopping here, and I'll discuss rest of the things. As I said, namespacing and everything, system. There are lots of things to explore. There are lots of options that we have, and we'll be just exploring all those options in our class. So thank you very much, and have a good blessed weekend. And you will have chance to just work on that. Maybe on your own, you will just as I said, go to the lynda.com and anywhere, and you can just brush up your concepts, and you can just always run those files with that. So thank you very much, and have a good day.